We have finally come to the end of the questioning of HN53, the former detective inspector of the Special Demonstration Squad, who was in the unit till 2005. This afternoon, he was questioned about Operation Muscat, which was about Helen Steele tracking down John Dines and the moves of the SDS to protect John Dines and move him, which cost 2.5 million, we found out, about the litigation, the AB litigation, as it's called, brought by Peter Francis and HN123 about the psychological damage caused them by working as undercover officers for the SDS. There was a number of other topics which were covered in not enough detail. There were a lot of breaches which we can't talk about, and there was a lot of waiting round between questions being asked. It's been a frustrating day, it's fair to say. I'm joined by Donald O'Driscoll, Emily Apple, and Dave Morris. Pick the bones out of that one, people. What did you make of it?
Choose to be positive first.
Right, yeah. Right, Operation Muscat, yeah? Okay, so where do you start? Basically, Helen spent years, decades even, trying to find her former partner that she was living with, who disappeared, faking a breakdown, disappeared off the face of the earth. And the SDS, meanwhile, he was obviously the undercover officer, John Dines, and they did everything they could to prevent her finding him for years, starting in the 90s with Bob Lambert covering up for him. Now, the thing is, yes, if she found him, it would have exposed the fact that he was undercover officer, tricking her into a sexual relationship to benefit his cover. But also it would have happened during the McLibel case, the long legal case against McDonald's that me and Helen were fighting. And if he'd been found during that case at any point, and the litigation went on effectively until 2005, because the European Court was the final sort of stage of that litigation. And the police were terrified, clearly, that if he'd been discovered during any time in that litigation, it would have blown out of the water the fact the SDS existed, B, that he'd been engaging in this deceitful sexual relationship, and C, that the SDS had been actively involved in the campaign against McDonald's, the writing and distribution of the anti-McDonald's fact sheet that was the subject of the litigation, and that they would be able, as they say in their documents, we would have been able to call Dines, Lambert, and or the police commissioner of the Metropolitan Police as witnesses in that case. And the fact that they had denied us access to those witnesses meant that they were actively sabotaging the case, which was the longest case in English legal history. And this is a massive miscarriage of justice. And they were aware of that. Also, I think Lambert was aware that also it would open to question some of the people that had been jailed for certain activities, but where SDS officers had been involved or acting as agent provocateurs. So really, the whole of Operation Muscat was about preventing massive embarrassment to the Metropolitan Police and other unrelated miscarriages of justice.
And one of the last points that we were taken to, was the risk assessment, the risk assessment of Dines, and where he says, okay, there's two options: physical threat and or embarrassment. And he went, the biggest threat is embarrassment. That he would be exposed as an undercover. He knew that was the threat, and he was holding it over the SDS. And of course, the SDS were happy to go along with it, but they spent millions.
Yeah.
This included multiple trips by HN53 out to Australia just to talk to him.
And it was dominating his work in London as well.
Yeah.
The amount of officer time spent. So it was £2.5 million spent on relocating Dines, paying his lost wages for years, But on top of that, there was all the officer time and effort to prevent him from being found.
So just taking in the staggering number.
This is taxpayers' money being
But-
spent to prevent SDS being exposed for their wrongdoing.
Yeah, having already agreed to be on True Spies, but one of the main justifications that the SDS uses is how much they save the taxpayer through public order policing, and they just oh no, we'll just spend several million, but also a price tag at that is extraordinary. I had to go all the way to the top of the police.
Yeah,
there's no way
absolutely.
this was just an incidental expense. It's outstrips the budget of the SDS for about a decade.
I mean, it wasn't just HN53 who went on these trips. He was accompanied on at least 4 of them. One time he was accompanied by Roger Pierce. Another time he was accompanied by Janet Williams. These are the heads of Special Branch. Right. So, there is the oversight, the amount of attention to detail about this was incredibly significant. What was shocking about the evidence that we heard from HN53 today is that he claims throughout this entire process, he didn't even have a suspicion that there had been a sexual relationship between Helen Steele and John Dines. Utterly ridiculous assertion, one which John Dines himself said he assumed that HN53 would obviously know. He said that a South Wales police officer had said to him, well, you're obviously having sex with her. It was the idea that he wouldn't have been was just ridiculous. The idea that a detective wouldn't be aware of that is utterly ridiculous.
I mean, it's completely ridiculous. And I think, what we've seen this afternoon and in the questioning is, yet again, we haven't had enough time, and we haven't had enough time to do that kind of forensic examination that we've had with some witnesses where these utterly fucking ridiculous claims that are just insulting and rage inducing can actually be broken down in cross-examination, which is what these evidence hearings should be for. But yet again, we're in a position where we've had this inquiry that has run for so many years, where the cops have wasted so much time, where we keep getting told, oh, it costs too much to do evidence hearings. But that's what the whole thing is about. And we're not being able to actually hear these officers being properly challenged, and especially with the managers, about what they knew and what they did. And that needs breaking down in forensic examination. It needs going through slowly. It's it was like all the discrete topics we went through. It was like 1 or 2 questions, and no follow-ups, no way of actually getting to. I mean, apparently we're supposed to be trying to get to the truth in this bloody inquiry, but it don't feel like it at this point.
Yeah, as we said, the handling of the Rule 10 questions, which is how we get input into the process, has been pretty lacking on this officer. Sometimes the inquiry gets it really right and do it really well. This is not one of them, and it's it's such a waste of a valuable opportunity. Now, I'm sure the inquiry is going to go say, oh well, he's going to come back for a later closed hearing.
Right.
Oh well, we don't get to hear that. It's bad enough that we haven't got to see his reaction to so many important issues, because when we saw Dell, you could see that how important the reactions were. We'd be denied that for 58, we denied that for 53. We're made to jump through hoops. There's loads of people sat around that could do a much, much better job, but sat twiddling their thumbs because the inquiry is not able to run the process.
It was a full hour that we were waiting for the counsel to the inquiry to decide which Rule 10 questions to ask. When it came to actually asking them, they spent 10 minutes doing so. A ridiculous use of time. I mean, all the lawyers in the room are sat around waiting. I mean, it's a cowboy way of running an inquiry, quite frankly.
I mean, it is utterly ridiculous. And like you mentioned the closed sessions, and this is so problematic that we've got these officers coming back being asked stuff in closed. Like, there was a real lack of questions over his involvement in criminality, for example.
Yeah.
So is that all going to be asked in closed? How much of the stuff in closed affects us that we're not being told when they lied repeatedly?
So, a lot of the, really embarrassing stuff, they just basically blame the undercover officers. Yeah. Oh, I didn't know about that. It was shocking. Yes. But I only found about it out about it later. No one ever asked at the time, never investigated. So they blame the people lower down. But with Operation Muscat, they cannot do that because it was sanctioned at the highest level, and millions of pounds of taxpayers' money was being spent on protecting this undercover officer, John Dines. So, they really got off scot-free today on the questioning. And also Helen, who was in the room as well, was utterly pissed off with the way, her efforts over decades, really probably are the most significant thing that led to this inquiry in the first place. So have a bit of respect, inquiry, and put some proper time into this, into this scandal, Operation Muscat scandal. And I think we're going to be calling for, it to be addressed properly at a later stage. I mean, we've got Commander Pierce, ex-Commander Pierce, who actually authorised and signed off on Operation Muscat. He's coming in 2 days, but he's only here for a day, and he's got to deal with a huge range of issues. So it'd probably be 5 minutes tacked on the end, but he should have to come back again. And also Commander Williams is due at some point in the coming weeks, who also was heavily involved with Operation Muscat.
Colin Black as well.
He's tomorrow.
Yeah, but I think there was Muscat's important, in the sense that Muscat's the one that we have the most information on because it came the closest to actually blowing everything out of the water. But Mitting picked up on the point around the telephone records for such Alison Jenner, touchy subject, as which they've never asked the question about why he was called touchy subject or Jim Boylan cycling. But it's clear that the Muscat playbook is being used elsewhere. That a lot of the underlying issues, not just on the way they harassed Helen, but on how they handle internally. So we'll just get this really super sensitive access to phone records. We'll just sign it off. And he was Mitting, I did ask him the question today. It's like, here's the one in Jenner. Who did that? And he went, that would have been just the sergeants doing that. I just
he'd had a weekend to think about his excuse. And that was basically to blame the DS.
Yeah. But I think we can take that Muscat is not unique in that sense. It needs to be applied to them all.
Yeah, I think the other thing about Muscat is well, and all of STS activity is how they can spread the corruption. The cancer of the STS was being spread throughout other departments, other units, other countries, other police forces. That they, to stop Helen finding John Dines, they were in constant contact with, first the Australian authorities and then the New Zealand authorities, and they're no doubt telling them a load of lies, and then they're trying to stop Helen coming into the country secretly, and they're, there's all kinds of, the thing about the STS is to protect the STS, they have to pull out all the stops in associated departments and fields. So the corruption spreads. It doesn't start with the STS, but the point is it's the Metropolitan Police hierarchy are complicit in all of the STS, not just bad tactics, but also the cover-up.
And I think related to that is a topic that comes up every now and again, is how is that of disruption. And, they're asking, you're disrupting these campaigns. No, we weren't really disrupting. They keep spinning off, but it's clear they have a MO about disruption. And again, Muscat, all these stuff. It's like they're used to disrupting things. They're used to interfering. They're used to trying. When James Thompson was trying to interfere with a house purchase, it's just standard nature. It's second nature. The inquiry has been done very, very little to actually really pin that down, that pattern of disruption.
And also the security services. The thing about the SDS is it's operating like the security services, but it's within the police force. So whereas it's almost impossible to get the security services on trial, with the police force, they're supposed to be accountable and transparent and all that kind of stuff. So all this stuff is coming out, but what the security services are doing with all this information and how they're collaborating, authorizing the targeting, interfering with legal processes is yet to come out at all in this case. We know the security services are heavily involved in behind the scenes with protecting the SDS and so on, but we haven't really got the details, have we?
So about the MI5 and the security, I think there's a lot to be, what we're seeing in the SDS is what MI5 are doing. I think if we were to scratch the surface of MI5, in fact, the few times where the surface of MI5 has been scratched has been pretty horrendous. The Officer X case, the far right abuser, what happened to Ben. So I think,
Well, Trevor Morris in the witness box said he was asked about smearing the Lawrence family. He said, "Oh, well, the SDS, no, we don't do that. That's the security services job."
So I think, there's a whole other scandal.
And he used to work for the security services, so he knows.
Yeah. And you heard similar stuff in the IPT case, it's like, that's, there's a whole set of new scandals come out. Somebody said many years ago, you need an inquiry to answer the questions of the second inquiry to answer the questions of the first inquiry. The next inquiry is going to be what the hell MI5 has been up to all these years.
I was in that. We had a comment the other day about should the Stephen Lawrence inquiry have been told about the fact there was an undercover officer involved. And as I was watching it, I was laughing. I was thinking, well, that will be the next inquiry in 20 years. And we find out what surveillance we were under in this inquiry that the inquiry didn't know about.
Yeah, it's like Inception, isn't it? Like Spy Cops Inception, like layer upon layer of it. As well as Muscat, the next topic that was asked of HN53 was about the AB officer case. This was Peter Francis and HN123 bringing litigation against the Met for the psychological damage they suffered as undercover officers. Again, HN53, this will seem to be a huge area of his responsibility. We saw the reports that he wrote on it. Again, as we've come used to, though he avoided saying that he couldn't remember, he basically failed to answer the questions repeatedly throughout, just describing what was in front of him. Essentially, it was a very frustrating series of questions. Yeah,
can I just say that these legal cases brought by undercover officers A and B are actually quite significant because A led to whistleblowing, Peter Francis, which really took the criticism of the SDS to a new level. But also Officer B, I read his witness statement this morning, and he became very disillusioned with being an undercover officer. He began to identify with the people that he was infiltrating. And in fact, eventually, he counted them as more friends than his colleagues. And he wondered why he was doing it. And I think that's quite important. It's something that's been missed, that that at the end of the day, they're infiltrating, people that are trying to make the world a better place. Basically, that's what it comes down to. And that's why they're there. And in fact, they try to pretend that when officers start identifying with their targets, that they call it Stockholm syndrome. Yeah, implying that somehow they've been conned into actually relating to the people that they're among. But actually, the Stockholm syndrome relates to the SDS. It's the SDS that's a cult that demands loyalty, demands everybody think the same, use the same jargon, and really they've actually been captured by the SDS, these undercover officers. And, obviously they've chosen to do that. They're getting well paid. But at the same time, they're just pawns in a much bigger game, in a much bigger machine, which is led from the top.
Well,
that's my view.
It's the entirety of Special Branch. Special Branch recruits in. And one of the things that we touched on the end was, this relationship between Special Branch and the rest of the Metropolitan Police is like the reason they don't like non-Special Branch police officers around the SDS.
They're all a little cult,
because they say, well, they're not trained in the way we want them trained. Or
apart from the no training that they did.
but also the just going back to the HN53, all his work on Muscat and Officer AMP, like he's the operations manager for the SDS. DCI, the person above him, 58, is supposed to be overseeing policy. It's like when they're all passing the book to each other, you're saying, well, it wasn't me. It's like he's saying, well, I'm not actually there. So what actually is going on in this unit? Who is managing this unit? It's just none of it makes sense. And also, they're all in the same office.
He also blamed C Squad. He was asked about, why they're doing all these reports on black family justice campaigns. Having been forced into a corner to admit, yes, we are targeting those campaigns, but we're doing it because C Squad, which is a different squad, they're the ones who are asking us for that intelligence, that information. So, they're trying to blame a different unit, but they're all quite aware of what each other are doing, and they're all working together.
Well, they've all served on the same units. The amount I've served on C Squad and B Squad getting these things. So the idea they don't know, and the reason they don't need training in the SDS is because they're doing what the rest of the special branch is doing.
And I think this is the thing that came out, like they all move through all the different desks on special branch. So this idea that they can just say, oh, well, C Squad did this or whichever, it is utterly ludicrous. Like, I mean, his just way of just not answering anything. I mean, I'm at the point where I just want to scream.
Yeah, and totally understandable, comrade. I mean, it's a very frustrating process. One of the most frustrating I feel today. He's not actually the last SDS officer. We will be back in September for 3 days of HN86, but in regular order, it's the last of the SDS officers. Tomorrow we go into the more senior management. As well as those two main areas, there was other questions for HN53. He was asked about blacklisting, about the list X companies. He said that would have been special. That would have been C Squad and special branch dealing with that,
which obviously he knew nothing about.
Absolutely nothing about that at all. Wouldn't know how that worked. We kind of ran through very rapid fire, as we've said, through like some other topics. They weren't explored at all. He was presented with information from reports. He wasn't given the background where the report came from. We saw the one which was from Jason Bishop about how the injunction on the Edo on protesters against that. We should give advice to companies like Reed and Spearhead that the injunctions might be counterproductive. He said, I wouldn't know anything about that. But without that context of the fact that this was one of the officers on his watch who was given this report, which he had oversight of, he wasn't really held to task on this.
I mean, I don't think he was really asked anything about HN3 at all over the last 2 days. I wasn't here last week, but I did watch it all online, and I don't think I heard anything about HN3. And again, I'm very concerned this is going into closed when it shouldn't be. But there is this huge issue of intelligence sharing with private companies, and it hasn't been explored because they're not asking the right questions, but they're not giving it enough time. And it comes back to time again, and it comes back to all these issues. And we've seen it time again with witnesses. Is we have actually quite good questioning on the first day. Sometimes the second day we have 2 days or 3 days, but then everything else gets rushed, and everything else needs the amount of time that they give it in those first few days. And the fact that it is in a report of what should the desk do if Reed or Spearhead, they were the companies organised the DSEI massive arms fair. And the fact that they had that contact with the desk, because it wouldn't be in a report in that way if they didn't. And they're all just denying knowledge of it, and it's just insulting.
I think the relationship with corporations is really important, because they keep going on about the product and the customers. Who are these customers who are benefiting from all this outrageous infiltration tactics? And corporations they're there to protect the interests of corporations. I just say I missed that about the Boiling document. But basically, that in 1989, special branch officers met with McDonald's heads of security, and they discussed the fact that McDonald's was getting lots of criticism, including from London Greenpeace, and they were advising McDonald's on tactics to use. The following year, we got the writ served on us, and the court case started, and the McLeibel case started. So the relationship between the special branch and corporations and how that took place isn't really properly being investigated, or it's being skated over. But this is a driver for the existence of this unit. They're providing information to corporations, they're providing information to the security services, and actually most of the documents that we've seen in this inquiry have come from the security services, maintaining these records for decades, forever in fact, whereas the police, we know, have been destroying documents, shredding them. But fundamentally they're there to serve what they call their customers, which is mainly corporations and security services.
And a bunch of things that are late things that have been also quickly brushed over was there was the legal professional privilege material, which actually relates to to civil case. It's like they're reporting statements. There is policy around spying on elected representatives. Lawyers was another point, Kirsty. And he managed to fluff the questions enough, and his feet just weren't held to the fire. It's like people are making claims. This is. Are you allowed to do this? Are you not allowed to do this? And he was just like, yeah. I couldn't tell you what his answer was because it was so vague.
And the thing is like, and I know I've said this a load of times on these things, but like, if you believe that we live in this so-called liberal democracy where these things are important, like we might all know that's a fallacy, but the reality is, like, we are supposed to live in a state where lawyers aren't spied on, where MPs aren't spied on, where the police don't breach our legal privilege all the time. And the fact that these questions aren't even being given enough time to have a proper answer, to be able to force these, because we've seen the questioning when they are forced to answer, when they have the time to actually drill down into the documents,
when
because
they're cornered by the documents,
then they
have to hold their hands up,
and they have to be shown all these documents, and the time needs to be there to show them these documents, to get the answers, to force them to actually to confront them with what they have done.
Well, I think this is an ideological problem with the inquiry. The inquiry themselves have never shown a fundamental understanding of the right to protest, of the Article 10 and 11 things. They are fundamental human rights that ought to be protected. But no point have you heard any police officer say, "Oh yeah, I understand the Article 10. They're protected rights. You have to protect them all." If you give a few bit of lip service, but you also don't get the sense that the inquiry have grappled with that issue themselves. It's something they want to shy away from.
But they're very, very keen on their own human rights to protect their privacy, which has completely dominated the inquiry from the beginning. The rights of the police to be anonymous, or documents to be redacted, and so on. So, I mean, look, fair enough. But let's apply those rights to the public. And therefore, none of this infiltration or monitoring should be tolerated at all. But the good thing about this inquiry is it's fantastic. The fact that we've got this inquiry is a victory. The fact that we've exposed this unit is a victory. The fact that we've got tens of thousands of documents. Oh yes, we could have had more on the mod screen, but we've got those documents. They are out in the public, and people can draw their own conclusions.
We've had some questions, as one from Mr. Abney. Absolutely infuriating day for reasons that no one is allowed to know for reasons. Public inquiry in name only. Yeah, I mean, that's very much the case. I think today really summed up what the entire process has been like. Remember, the inquiry was called in 2015. we spent 5 years at snail's pace because of the anonymity requests of the police and attempts at judicial review by the police. And then we've rushed. We rushed through the actual evidential elements whilst, you know, the whole process is so incredibly slow.
So a comment towards the end was when Mitting wanted HN53 to review something. He said, well, we haven't finished redacting those documents. And it's like, oh my God,
Wow.
you know, these are
11 years in.
11 years in, obviously key documents. What?
Yeah. Just someone
And
thank
this is the
I mean,
thing.
we're
It's,
still getting documents today being released relevant to these witnesses that we haven't had a chance to look at yet, and we're supposed to be able to question them when they're in the witness box. Too late. He's not there now.
yeah, or we're getting them after they've given evidence as well. That things are going up. You know, it's they've had a long
Anyway,
time.
we're
to do this.
slaughtering them, and it's
Yeah.
so
So
it's
there
an
was just-
absolute disaster for the Metropolitan Police.
A comment there of thanking us for covering Operation Muscat because people weren't able to follow it during the proceedings because of all the breaches, which really felt like the witness was doing on purpose.
Oh, completely.
He repeated the same, the thing which triggered the one breach. He mentioned immediately as soon as we were back again, causing another breach. It felt like it was on purpose. Another comment: I'll sound like a broken record, but Mitting could take away the anonymity of any officer if he felt they were not taking the inquiry seriously, but he won't. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many officers who've got anonymity in this process that really do not deserve it in any way, shape, or form. It's incredibly frustrating. You know that we're at this point, and there's so many unanswered questions, so much not covered that really should be. There's more to come. We're back again tomorrow. But we're back again tomorrow with Colin Black, the former commander of Special Branch, who will be here for just the one day. From here on in, I don't think any of the officers, any of the manager, one day, sometimes only half a day. Which, when you consider how many stoppages you get, any potential breaches that might happen, you're looking at an hour and a half of evidence at best in some cases.
Yeah, it's going to be incredibly frustrating. I'm expecting to be back here ranting.
Yes. So you can look forward to that. Anything else anybody wants to add?
Just to say that Colin Black is potentially quite interesting because he's one of the very, very few human peers who are actually running Special Branch at the time, signing off the authorizations. You know, if you want to say somewhere where the book stops in terms of policy within the SDS, he's central man.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Please tune in. The hearing will start at 10 a.m. tomorrow. The broadcast will start at 10:15. We'll be covering everything in the usual way. I'll do a video at about 10:45, previewing the day. Please join us for all of that. Thanks to everyone who's liked, shared, commented. Makes a huge difference to how visible these videos are. There was a journalist at the hearing today, Simon Israel, formerly of Channel 4 News. He isn't intending to file a report anytime soon. He's might file something in due course, but in general, the mainstream media has completely ignored this process, particularly when we've come to the managers, though previous sections have had some coverage. If you want to know what's happening, this is probably the only place you can really follow it properly. If you'd like to support, you can buy me a coffee. The link is in my profile. It would be really good if you could. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow from just before 10.